I think we will get going. Welcome to the webinar this afternoon, which is titled Understanding the Proposed Changes Put Forth in the FMMO, or Federal Milk Marketing Order Recommendations. With me, I'm Lucas Sjostrom, a Managing Director at Dairy Farmer Cooperative. With me is Dr. Marin Bozic and Karen Gefvert, who will both provide their portions of expertise here with EDGE. Dr. Bozic is an advisor to our board, and I'll let Karen introduce herself, but on staff with EDGE as well. Dr. Bozic, since you've got most of the slides, if you want to pull up the slides and I'll get going here. Go ahead.
Give me a second. I'm starting the. See. Wrong
So
screen.
we're going to talk through these slides, which will be, I think, probably just over a half hour. And at the end, certainly we'll have time for questions. So please, we would love if your questions are in the chat, just due to the voice function of Teams. So please put your questions in the chat. But I'm going to lead us off with just a quick look back on where we were before I turn it over to Dr. Bozic. How were we involved? What happened? And so if you were involved, you may recall, we convened a 5-state producer working group to examine the benefits of federal milk marketing orders. Dr. Bozic advised us through that, but we had farmers and staff from these 5 states, different organizations, not just EDGE members, kind of talking about the benefits of federal milk marketing orders. Again, we kind of formed the group to preserve federal orders. We saw obvious things that we should keep. And so we wanted to study and say, all right, as we head towards a hearing someday, what are the things we should emphasize that we want to keep, and what could we get rid of or change or alter? And then in spring of 2023, a proposal was put forth to go to a federal order. EDGE at the time thought there was more data needed and more to be worked out. But if we were heading toward a federal hearing, we said we would participate if we could move it toward more market-based conditions through federal orders while preserving them, again, trying to eliminate the negative PPDs, and then finally maintaining or enhancing risk management so much as possible. And we put forth a handful of proposals, 4 or 5, depending on how you count them. And USDA accepted 2 and then sent one of them as a informal rulemaking option. And so they accepted our Class 3 Plus proposal. We had also noted that we thought the higher of proposal with announced skim milk prices, advanced elimination of advanced or using announced as it states their skim milk prices would be an improvement. And as I said, we were looking for more definition around milk checks, and the USDA AMS said we certainly could do that, but not through this hearing. And so we will look to informal rulemaking as an option in later days. And then just looking back, I got the wrong year there. I wish it was 2025 in some ways, but August 23 of 2023 or 2024, excuse me, 2023 is when the hearing began. So last August, the hearing officially began. We had 10 different EDGE dairy farmers or board members testify throughout the hearing. August 25th, so just a couple days after the hearing, we proposed including the butterfat percent updates. We also, in early September, proposed a compromise of a block barrel inclusion. We gave our formal proposals on the 25th and 26th of September. And then the last thing we did kind of before ending our participation, because those are the 4 areas we participated in that Dr. Bozic will go into a little deeper, but we presented the Class 1H or Class 1 hedgeable proposal. And so I'll note that USDA looked through all of those, and we'll talk about that later. But we participated in the first 4 portions of the hearing. We intended to just take on our 2 proposals, but we ended up with 4 by the end of it, because as we were listening, we were finding compromise and offering ways for the federal orders to be improved. So I believe with that, I will turn it over to Dr. Bozic.
Thank you, Lucas. This is for the end, right? Like we'll go through the timeline at the end of the presentation?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, so there were 5 areas of the federal order reform that we will visit today. I'll spend some more time on the make allowances, on standard component test, and the Class 1 mover. and I'll touch briefly on Class 1 differentials, as Edge did not actively participate in that part of the hearing in Indiana. So the part that is probably of the most interest to dairy farmers is what will happen to my milk price? Will I get paid less or more as a result of this federal order hearing? Now, all dairy farmers in our area, at least, when they get a milk check, they can see what's the value of the butter fat in their milk, what's the value of protein, what's the value of butter solids. Maybe there'll be some other elements that contribute to the premium, but very rarely will they find that the volume of milk itself is a plus. They get paid on solids. So we need to look at what are the implications of this hearing on the solids value, on butterfat value, on protein value, and other solids value in milk. Keep in mind that the federal orders do not set the prices that people must pay. They just set the minimum prices that those private processors that choose to pool on the order must pay in order to maintain their pooling status. If the processors decide not to pool, if they are cooperatively owned, or if they're outside of the federal order area altogether, they're not bound by these numbers. So over the next few slides, what I've put together is the impact on butterfat and protein and other solids under each of the major proposals presented at the hearing, including what is currently the official formula and what AMS proposed to be the outcome of this hearing, now pending comments and pending the release of final decision. So let's start with butter. The butterfat make allowance, current make allowance is 17 cents and 0.15 cents. When you look at the butter price for June 2024, which was just over $3, the butterfat price that you would infer using this make allowance is $3.54 and 0.44 cents. National Milk requested the increase in make allowances from 17 to 21. IDFA proposed a stepwise approach where the first step would happen on January 1st, 2025, and the last step would happen on January 1st, 2028, in roughly equal increases over time. IDFA was looking for some sort of like a hand reaching out to National Milk, recognizing that the full impact of increasing make allowances in year one would probably be in itself disturbing the market as it could impact the dairy farmers too negatively. So they said, let's do it over 4 years. Edge, our proposal, well, we didn't have a proposal. Our proposal was to stop and wait until we have the formal mandatory survey of processing costs so we can make a very informed decision. All of the surveys on which the decision is made in this hearing are voluntary surveys. So, and not only does one need not participate, but even if they do participate, there's no audit of their numbers. They can essentially put whatever they want as their cost of production. The AMS landed somewhere higher at National Milk and a little bit higher than the year one of IDFA. What is notable, and this is true for all of the components, AMS said, we cannot legally look at the cost of production on the farm side. We have to make this ruling based on our best guess of cost of processing on the manufacturing, processing of dairy commodities, not of raw milk. That part is difficult to explain to dairy farmer, but it unfortunately does work that way according to the current law. AMS is not allowed to look at cost of production according to the current law. That doesn't mean that indirectly they haven't been. Notice that their numbers are much smaller than the highest number requested by IDFA, and AMS fully rejected this idea that we will have a stepwise approach over 4 years. They said, here's our decision. If you don't like it, when we have better data, come back for another hearing. We're not going to do a stepwise. So what is the impact of this change on the butterfat price? So I put forward the impact on the upper Midwest order, which had an average butterfat in June of this year of 4.15% or 4.15 pounds per hundredweight of milk. Again, none of these proposals will go into effect in June. June is behind us. This is just for illustrative purposes, so we can try to get a sense for what would be the order of magnitude on the component value, on the butterfat value. According to the National Milk's proposal, the value of butterfat in this 100 weight of milk that has 4.15 butterfat would be 19 cents negative. According to IDFA, and this is their 2028 number, so the highest step in their ladder, that would be 54 cents negative. According to us, to EDGE, there will be no impact because we requested that make allowance changes, reforms be postponed until after the Farm Bill is passed, until the new legislation is enacted. And the Farm Bureau, American Farm Bureau Federation, also had the same position as EDGE on make allowances. You can see that AMS landed somewhere between National Milk and IDFA, 27 cents negative on the this 100 weight of milk. Now we're going to take the same butterfat prices according to these two proposals, the proposed decision and no changes from EDGE. We're going to apply that to protein. When you calculate protein price, there are two things that matter. What is the cheese price and what is the butterfat price? We are essentially looking at the contribution of protein to the value of cheese above and beyond what a butterfat contributes to the cheese is a matrix of butterfat and protein. You cannot have a cheese without butterfat. So the June price was $1.9962 per pound of cheese. This is the weighted average between blocks and barrels. The protein price, according to the current formula, was just over $2. And the make allowance that is currently used is 20 cents and 0.03 cents per pound of cheese. National Milk proposed the increase to 24 cents. IDFA, the first year was slightly higher than National Milk, but they would go all the way up to 28 cents and 0.40 cents. According to our position, we would not change anything. And AMS landed in a decision at 25 cents and 0.04 cents. The full impact on a typical 100 weight of milk, as was pooled in June on the Upper Midwest order, would be 25 cents per 100 weight negative according to National Milk, 42 cents negative according to IDFA, and 29 cents negative is what AMS proposed in their decision. On the other solid side, the current price for dry whey in June is 42 cents and 0.49 cents. The current make allowance is 19 cents and 0.91 cents. Proposed make allowance for National Milk going up to 23. IDFA had it much higher even in year one and would go substantially higher by year 4 by 2028, all the way up to well over 31 cents per pound of dry whey. We proposed no changes again until the Farm Bill has passed. AMS landed at a number that is higher than National Milk, even higher than the first year of IDFA. This is about the second IDFA year, 2026, January 1, 2026, or thereabouts. The full impact of these proposed changes on the typical 100 weight of milk pooled in Upper Midwest order last month would have been 18 cents negative according to National Milk. Look at the difference between National Milk and IDFA. IDFA would have it 71 cents negative, and AMS landed at 40 cents negative. Now we're going to combine the impacts of butterfat, protein, and other solids to see what this would mean on the class 3 price. We do need to cover just non-fat solids for just a second before we go there. You don't typically see the non-fat solids price on your milk check, so this may be a little bit more arcane. The way the non-fat solids price appears on your milk check is very indirectly through producer price differentials, and we won't go into that on today's call. So the numbers are here. This deck will be available. You can study this at a later time. Let's take a look at the impact on class 3 price. Now, here I'm keeping the component tests as they currently are. So 3.5 pounds of protein per 100 weight of skim milk. The current formula and current make allowances resulted in a class 3 price of $19.87 in June of this year. According to National Milk, if we were to take the National Milk make allowances for butterfat, protein, other solids, combine it all together, the price would drop about 57 cents a hundred. According to IDFA, the price would drop $1.54 per hundred. EDGE and American Farm Bureau Federation would be the only that would keep the price as high as it was because the make allowance reform would be postponed. And AMS landed at a decision where the class 3 price would drop from 1987 to 1898, which is an 89 cents decline in the price of class 3 milk. Now, keep in mind, this is before any changes to component tests. This is before any impact of removing blocks and removing barrels from the cheese price, before any impact of class 1 differentials. We'll talk about that next. So the class 3 price, according to AMS, would go down 89 cents. On the class 4 side, the effect would not be as dramatic, though it's still a very substantial number, 73 cents lower, according to proposed AMS decision. Again, according to EDGE, there would be no negative changes until the Farm Bill is passed. Now, the next topic that we need to cover are the standard component tests. Why are we even talking about this? Isn't this just an accounting issue? Well, you see, the way the federal order accounting works is that the class 1 manufacturers have to pay money to the pool, not based on the actual protein test in the milk that they have used for gallon jugs, etc. Rather, they pay based on standard component tests, based on standard protein and other solids tests. And those standard protein, which is currently 3.1 and other solids 5.9, those didn't change for almost quarter century now. National Milk introduced this idea, and this idea was actually first discussed in a paper that I published with Chris Wolf, Professor Wolf from Cornell, just a year before the federal order started. National Milk proposed the idea of increasing the protein and other solids to the numbers that roughly correspond what happened in 2022. IDFA said, we don't want to increase this at all, and that the fluid processors groups basically said the same. They argued that the milk that they receive does not get the components that are typical of the orders, that people send higher protein milk to manufacturing, lower protein milk to the class 1. They argued that in the Southeast, the milk is not, the milk components in the Southeast orders and the Florida orders are nowhere near what the components are in other orders where milk is priced based on the multiple components. We listened very closely to everything that was said at the hearing. We did not put a proposal before the hearing, but as we were listening to others present it, we quickly realized that they're forgetting one very important factor, and that is butterfat. Butterfat, increasing the butterfat test in these formulas would not impact the amount of money that class 1 processors have to pay to the pool, which is probably the reason why nobody wanted to change it on the National Milk side or the National Jersey, which also had is very similar proposal to National Milk. And Farm Bureau also endorsed National Milk proposal, but they also didn't have anything on butterfat. We testified and we said, hey, if you're going to do this, you better increase the butterfat as well, because if you have, let's say, 3.39 protein in skim milk and 3.5 butterfat in the 100 weight of milk, that's out of whack. Nobody has milk that only has 3.5 butterfat and such high protein. And where it matters is risk management. If you try to manage risk with class 3 futures, or if you're using LGM dairy, which relies on class 3, or DRP, which relies on class 3 and class 4, you will be under-hedged on the butterfat side. Now, over the last few years, that wouldn't have been all that bad because butter prices were typically rallying, not nosediving. But history is rarely a prologue for what the future brings. So we were quite strong about the need to consider risk management when it comes to aligning butterfat prices. AMS came back with a number that is higher than current, but not as high as National Milk requested. The National Milk requested 3.39, AMS proposed 3.3 protein in skim, in the 100 weight of skim milk. National Milk, AMS basically said, the appropriate time period to look at the components is 2016 through 2022. So that like it was a 6-year period, not a shorter period of time. I think that was AMS's way of reaching out to IDFA and recognizing that the components that fluid milk processors in skim fat orders receive are not as high as in the upper Midwest or other orders that are heavy on manufacturing. So they wanted to increase it, but not as strong as National Milk asked for. I think that there's going to be renewed interest in aligning the butterfat test with higher protein tests now that we know which way the AMS is thinking. You see, fluid milk processors, they could not come to a hearing and argue for higher butterfat test if they were opposing higher skim solids test. But now that they know that that battle is lost, that there will be higher skim tests, they may come back and say, well, if you're going to do that, why don't you address the butterfat as well? It remains to be seen whether that's a change that can still be effectuated in the final decision that's going to be released later this year, or will that require a whole new hearing, or the next time we have a hearing, people come back and fix the butterfat. On the class 1 mover, which is the third topic of the hearing, there was a huge fight. And for a number of years now, at least 2.5 years, National Milk has been asking for a reform to this average of plus 74 cents. They argued, initially they said, when they first approached IDFA in 2022, or 2021 even, they argued, okay, well, if we're going to keep it average off, we need to increase the adjuster, substantially increase the adjuster to recover the money that was left on the table during COVID. IDFA rebuffed them, and they could not see eye to eye, and that was one of the major impetus for having this federal hearing. National Milk passionately advocated for return to higher off with a number of farmer testimonies, expert witnesses, etc. IDFA and MIG, which is the Milk Innovation Group, the fluid milk bottlers, they went the other way. They said, let's keep the average off so that we can hedge milk, but we realized that the 74 cents, which is fixed in the law, needs to be changed. Let's make it adjust dynamically over time based on the experience of the last 3 years or so. Our proposal was to focus on risk management, but to be flexible in which way we get there. So we were a little bit unique that even coming into the hearing, we proposed 2 different proposals for pricing class 1 milk. And those 2 proposals are mutually exclusive. You could not do class 3 price if you go with a higher off with no advanced prices, and the other way around. So from the outset, we approached this with an open mind, with a desire to find something that works for everyone. And recognizing that a large segment of dairy producer community feels very strongly about higher off, but also that the processors have a genuine, legitimate need to manage risk. So the hearing was quite contentious. Passions were running high, but it became clear through the hearing that the share of the fluid milk that is actually hedged is probably 10 to 20%, and I'm being generous here. That the rest of the fluid milk is your typical gallon jugs or other half gallons at HTST that are made to the market, fresh to the store, and because of the existence of advanced pricing, there was really no need to do any risk management there. So as our team was listening and taking all this in and genuinely trying to understand each proposal and where the proponents are coming from, we came up with an idea to bifurcate class 1, to go back to the higher off for the milk that is not hedged, your regular HTST milk, and to stay with some form of pricing that would facilitate risk management for extended shelf life, aseptic milk, etc. The way we presented that, by asking for essentially 2 subclasses, that was deemed as outside the scope of the hearing. USDA opposed, they objected, and our proposal, we entered into the record, but is not formally part of the hearing. The AMS was not allowed to formally consider that as they were making that decision. Well, the funny thing is that even though they formally could not base their decision based on this proposal. What they ended up with looks very, very similar to what we were advocating for. And what they came up with does not match either National Milk or IDFA's proposal. If you think at what is the most, what is it the closest to, it's probably the closest to the logical outgrowth proposal that we came up with during the month of October as we were in Indiana, hearing everybody and trying to contribute. So what AMS said is that in the end, they're going to return to the higher off. However, for ESL milk, they're going to do an adjustment. And that adjustment essentially works just the way we proposed. It will keep it average off with the adjuster that is moving, that is a moving average adjuster, and with a minimum lag of 12 months and a maximum lag of 36 months. So essentially it's hedgeable. You can see, based on the current futures prices, you can lock in the class 1 price for ESL milk up to a year out with no basis risk or minimal basis risk. So Edge probably made the biggest contribution in the hearing at the proposal that is not even mentioned in the proposed decision by AMS. But we care a lot about the results, so we are not planning to sue AMS for plagiarism. The last topic that AMS addressed to this hearing were the class 1 differentials, the cost of serving class 1 markets. The class 1 differentials, basic purpose of class 1 differentials is to move milk, to facilitate the movement of milk from deficit to surplus areas. I said it wrong. From surplus to deficit areas. Deficit areas the Southeast is the biggest deficit area in the country. And the surplus areas, you can see, the upper Midwest would be surplus area. Idaho would be an example of surplus area. Here in Colorado would be some surplus areas as well. So that's where the milk is primarily for manufacturing and can be drawn upon if needed to make sure that the class 1 market is well served in other parts of the country. You can see that the blue means that the increase is the highest, and the red means that the increase is the lowest. Now, throughout the country, the class 1 differentials went up. There is not a single county where the class 1 differentials did not move at all. But the minimum increase would be in some counties, like here, for example, 5 cents increase, and the maximum increase is probably close to $3. I don't even know what the highest one is, like well over $2. Here you can see $2.40, etc. So now we have to take all of these changes together. Oh, I forgot to say, on the block barrel side, AMS decided to side with the National Milk, and they will remove barrels from the formula for calculating the cheese price. Edge proposed a compromise solution also at the hearing, having heard everyone. AMS recognized our proposal in their proposed decision. They said they considered it, they just weren't sure how to do economic analysis on it, so they did not pursue that. They also made the point in their proposed decision that all other products have for all other components, there's just a single commodity that is being surveyed, and the price of that component reflects the value of milk in making that one particular bulk commodity product. So either it's the butter, it's the dry whey, it's the non-fat dry milk, and now for cheese, it's going to be the 40-pound blocks that will be considered going forward. Our concern was and remains that by removing barrels as we head into 2025 and 2026, with a lot more block cheese plants coming online and no new barrel cheese plants coming online, that we will be cutting dairy producers short, that the barrels will become back at par with block or maybe slightly exceed it. And if the barrels are higher than blocks, then not having the protein price reflect that would result in a lower price to dairy farmers. That's why Edge was cautioning everyone not to rush into decision-making based on just what happened since 2016, when barrel prices started dropping before blocks. That's not the way that AMS wanted to go. we are most likely going to have a block-based pricing for cheese going forward. I don't anticipate that changing in the final decision. So what is the impact of all of these changes together? First, I want to show you the impact on SUP, or the statistical uniform price. Now, this is the prices that the private processor would have to pay to the producer that's located in the reference county for that order. In case of Upper Midwest, that would be, I believe, Cook County, Illinois. So it may be just 10 cents lower here in most of Wisconsin and Minnesota. The impact is quite regionally different. It varies from as high as increase of $1.97 in the Appalachian order. You can see up Northeast, 43 cents higher. Florida, almost $1.50 higher. Southeast, almost $2 higher. And take a look at the Upper Midwest. The full impact of these changes is actually 10 cents negative. We are not alone. California, 20 cents negative. Arizona, 3 cents negative. Now, it's important to point out that this analysis is a very static analysis. It's basically an algebra exercise. This is not the economic analysis that looks into the behavioral responses from processors, dairy producers, etc., to figure out what's the new equilibrium milk price. So take this with a grain of salt. I think it does. I think that directionally, I think they're right. The areas with high prevalence or high share of milk going to the fluid market will see higher milk price. For us in the Upper Midwest, we will the primary effect will be through higher make allowances, which decreases milk prices for dairy producers. And unfortunately, at least for farms that rely heavily on dairy margin coverage, the increase in milk prices in other parts of the country will increase the all milk price, and that will increase the dairy margin coverage margins, which means that the payments on the dairy margin coverage program will not be as generous as they were in the previous few years. So that's a double whammy for us in the Upper Midwest here. That said, what are some of the other impacts that I anticipate? I anticipate that there will be more milk pooled on federal orders. A lot of processors here in the Upper Midwest have depooled either partially or fully over the last few years because make allowances do not reflect their processing costs. And they believe that they can obtain milk cheaper than paying the federal order minimum prices. As federal order minimum prices decline, those processors may find it attractive to pool once again. And if they do pool, then the dairy farmers will benefit again from positive producer price differentials. In most of the months they are positive. Who will actually get paid less? If you were not pooled on the market, if you're not pooled on the order, it's most likely that you will not see a difference in your milk check. If you were pooled on the order and you were paid the premium above and beyond the market price, which means that the milk is short where your processors are, it's also not very likely that you will see the material difference in your milk check price, because the minimums may go down, but your overorder premiums will compensate for that. People are bidding for your milk. Where farmers may actually see the decline in their milk price is that they are paid exactly the federal order minimums. They're shipping to private processors, and the private processors are pooled on the orders. Now, in that kind of circumstance, when there is no overorder premium and the processors are not depooled, I would expect the milk check to go down in the Upper Midwest area in particular. So the answers will differ. I hate to be an economist with two hands on one hand on the other hand, but it is complicated, and the impact will not be the same for everyone. With that, I believe that we're going to wait for Lucas and Karen to say a few more words before we open it for questions. So I'm going to return back to who's next.
Thanks, Marin. Yeah, go ahead, Karen. And Harry, we do see your question in the chat, so we'll address that later. Dr. Bozic, if you want to study that. But Karen, please introduce yourself and go ahead.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Karen Gefvert. I am the Director of Government Affairs for Dairy Farmer Cooperative. I work on all of our federal legislation and regulatory initiatives for EDGE and our members. I am going to share my screen so that you all can take a look at what it is I'm going to go through. So what I'm going to talk about a little bit is EDGE's initiative for accurate and timely payments. So in conjunction or as two separate initiatives for what we think, what our members have tasked us with regard to moving forward on different policy items. One is the federal order hearing and what you just heard from Dr. Bozic, and then the other is a legislative initiative. And many of what we've come up with have came from that working group that Lucas shared about at the beginning of this meeting. And so what our working group came up with was a set of principles, milk pricing reform principles. And that has somewhat changed and morphed over the last 1.5 to 2 years as we have worked with members of Congress and we have worked with coalition stakeholders within the dairy industry, and really trying to target as we hone in on the Farm Bill and seeing that kind of take shape over last year and now this year, we've really had to narrow the focus on what's most important. And so that is what we are referring to as accurate and timely payments. And that really is two provisions. And I'll talk about what those provisions are in a minute, but I think understanding why they're important. As Dr. Bozic talked a little bit about depooling, especially in Federal Order 30, we have a significant number of processors that are depooling because they are not finding that that there is value in the pool for them, and they can function better outside of the pool. And so with the way in which the federal order structure is in place, there are protections that exist for farmers when the processor that they ship their milk to is pooled. And that was set up in a structure that was established 100 years ago. And so what we have found is that as processors depool, the farmers that ship their milk to that processor are left without those protections or the assurance of those protections. And so those two protections are accurate payments, so third-party verification. When a farmer ships their milk to a private processor or a cooperative, there is a third-party verification that takes place to ensure that the calibrations of machines are accurate when testing the milk for those components and proteins. And if the processor is depooled, there is no requirement that the testing needs to occur. And so that process and the arbitration process to question and have AMS participate in any kind of investigation, whether or not machines are calibrated, no longer is in place. So the other piece is timely payments, which is the federal orders establish individual federal orders establish time frames as far as how often farmers are paid. And that is required, one, if you're a class 1 processor, but then if you are depooled as a processor, there's no timing requirement as far as payment terms. And different federal orders have different payment terms established, but generally it is twice a month is the requirement for payment. So again, if a processor is depooled, that farmer no longer has the assurance of the benefit that they will be paid twice a month. And so I think it's important to put a caveat in here that while we haven't seen a lot of movement in these issues as we see a lot of depooling in the upper Midwest, we do know that there are pressures that exist that could change that situation quite readily and quite quickly. So so the initiative that came forward from that advisory group was that these two pieces, these two provisions, would be included as a legislative request for inclusion in the Farm Bill. And so The last two pieces I want to talk about are where are we with our congressional efforts, and then where are we with our coalition stakeholder efforts. So as far as our efforts with Congress, many of you will likely know that the House of Representatives, the Ag Committee there, has taken up and passed a bill draft and are moving forward on that. So that there's no indication at this point in time as to when that piece of legislation might see floor time, but there is still likely an amendment process that will occur with a bill, should that bill come to the floor yet in 2024. So EDGE has been working with members of the majority and minority House Agriculture Committee, as well as members of the House of Representatives, to continue to try and have legislation introduced and have that be ready to go as a marker bill, as an amendment. Once we are a little bit more in tune with how the House decides to proceed. As far as the Senate goes, we have not seen any bill language from either the majority or the minority agriculture committees. And so conversations continue to happen with committee staff about inclusion of that language and that text in base text. So we continue to work with a couple key offices in a very bipartisan way, focusing on the upper Midwest, but also trying to get a broad coalition of geographical representation. Since dairy is a nationwide commodity, we want to make sure that this is not just a Midwest initiative. That just helps strengthen the effort and the initiative of this policy initiative and having broader support. So then the last piece is our coalition initiative. And that's working with the stakeholders within the dairy industry, focusing on the upper Midwest, since that's where EDGE's footprint is, but also working with national groups as well. So that coalition of 10 stakeholders did send a letter to many offices in the Senate as well as in the House, and those minority and majority offices in the House and in the Senate, advocating for inclusion of this language, either through a marker bill as an amendment or through base text. And that coalition and working through different commodity groups processes when it comes to policy initiatives is still underway, and that coalition continues to slowly build and grow, and we hope to have that be even more robust as we continue to move forward on that. So that is the legislative and farm bill piece to what it is we're working on our policy initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Hopefully I'm coming through, because that was freezing up for me, so I have alerted those involved to kill their video feeds. Oh, thank you, Marin, bring that up. I just want to go through, so this is a 12-step process that's outlined very clearly on USDA's website. So I just want to bring up to where we are. We are officially on step 10, or 9.5. Step 6 was back in January when the hearing was over. So that was step 6. Step 7 was actually just correcting the transcripts, which I did not put on here. Step 8, we filed our post-hearing briefs April 1st. Step 9 was when USDA provided the recommended decision on July 1st, and it was officially today in the Federal Register. That brings us to September 13th. So we have talked already with the EDGE board about how we will be doing comments. You've seen some of Dr. Bozic's early analysis, and we're just going to be double checking as we put our package together, and probably restating some of the things we've already stated here today and stated in past testimony. But I think there's a few things that we'll be keying in on depending on where our partners are or aren't going forward for the September 13th deadline. Then looking ahead, USDA again, has 30 days to issue their final decision, and then it's over. That's the last chance. So this is just a recommendation, but USDA has up to 30 days, as we understand it, to issue that final decision. So November 12th is the last day that they can issue that decision, and then on it goes to a referendum. And I think they have some leeway within the day there, and so that's why there's no dates assigned. But this is a recommendation. We are taking it in still. It's 108 pages. EDGE is cited 30 times in the first 51 pages where we presented, and we're happy about our contributions. But now is the final time to make comments, and from there, we'll go forth and issue statements to members and the press on what we would recommend. As we said initially, we're pleased with the process on where we are. And we are appreciative of USDA being so collaborative with us. And we look forward to the rest of the process playing out, which is going to happen relatively quickly here. I said 30 days, excuse me, but it's 60 days, obviously, from now, and then 30 days after that. So I think we have one question in the chat from Dr. Bozic. I don't think we need to share the screen anymore. Or one question, excuse me, for Dr. Bozic, but please put any other questions in the chat. And if you have trouble chatting, we can try to find a way to get you verbalized here. But we have the first question, Dr. Bozic, that hopefully you've got a chance to review from Mr. Stugart. As it states that AMS put out, they put several pages together on this adjuster for the extended shelf life formula. And I think Mr. Stugart's just basically saying that they still have the old make allowances in there, but some of it wouldn't adjust until the new ones show up. So any comment on that, Dr. Bozic, and then please do enter in other questions.
Yeah, Harry, thank you for your contributions. Your comments over the years have always been very thoughtful and in-depth. I did not have a chance to study this part yet here, but if indeed you have covered an angle that AMS has not fully considered, I would encourage you to submit a comment, and the final decision may reflect the revisions that you're seeking to make here. And we will do the same. We will study your proposal and be in touch. My camera is unfortunately not working. My bandwidth is not very strong, so I apologize for not appearing on the screen again.
No worries. Any other questions? Heard somebody come off mute, so I'll wait another second. If you're going to speak, please go ahead. Last call. Well, thank you very much for your time. Karen, Dr. Bozic, anything else from you two that you would like to say? Karen, how can people get involved in the legislative work, and what would you like them to do today as far as an action step leaving today?
Yes, absolutely. If you have, if you're involved in another trade association that has involvement with dairy policy, I'd love to have a conversation with you and see what we can do to get your board or your policy committee up to speed on what it is we're working on and join our coalition effort. That would be probably step one. And step two is if you are not receiving the communications from EDGE, our e-newsletter, that is how we communicate regularly with our members. And once we have a little bit more indication on how the Farm Bill is going to move forward, that process is still a little bit unclear on both the House and the Senate side. We will be putting out an action alert. And so we'd love to have your contact information so that we can make sure that we get that to you when we're ready. Thank you.
Dr. Bozic, I know we can't see you. Anything else you want to add on just kind of the overall impact, especially for our EDGE members, but maybe farmers across the upper Midwest?
Thank you all for your time today. And thank you, EDGE, for leading throughout this process for the benefit of dairy farmers in the upper Midwest and throughout the United States.
And with that, we'll sign off. We're certainly available afterwards if you want to email or call. But thanks for your time and have a great rest of the week.